You made a decision last night in your sleep. You don't know what it was yet, but you're about to find out. That sounds impossible, doesn't it? We tend to think of sleep as absence, a gap, 8 hours of nothing sandwiched between the parts of life that actually count. But what if I told you that the person who woke up this morning already rehearsed today's hardest moment, that somewhere in the dark you stood at a crossroads and chose a direction? Let me introduce you to a puzzle that keeps growing no matter how many pieces you collect. Imagine yourself as a house under constant renovation. Rooms added, walls knocked down, furniture moved overnight. Every morning you wake up and tour the place trying to make sense of what changed. Sometimes you recognize the work, sometimes you don't, and sometimes you feel certain a decision was made while you were gone, even if no one left a note. That feeling might matter later. I'll come back to it. There is a puzzle inside all of us, and the terrifying, beautiful thing about this puzzle is that it keeps on growing. It doesn't matter how much you reflect, or how many personality tests you take, or how deep your meditation practice goes. There will always be vast territories of yourself that remain unmapped. We spend roughly a third of our lives asleep. If you live to 80, that's over 26 years with your eyes closed. And here's the strange part. We don't really know what happens during most of it. We wake up, we shake off the fog, and we go about our day as if nothing occurred. But something did occur. We just can't remember what. Imagine a book where every third page is missing. Think about that for a moment. There's an entire version of you that exists only in the night. A version that thinks, feels, makes choices, faces fears, and every morning that version dissolves like morning frost, leaving behind only traces, sometimes not even that. I want to explore something with you today. Not lucid dreaming, though we'll touch on that. Not dream interpretation in any mystical sense. Something more unsettling and more fascinating. The possibility that our sleeping minds are working on problems we haven't consciously solved yet, and sometimes they solve them for us, without our permission, without our awareness. There's a film called Memento where the main character has a brain injury. He can't form new long-term memories. Every few minutes his slate gets wiped clean. He wakes up in strange rooms, covered in notes he wrote himself, trying to piece together what he was doing and why. It's terrifying to watch because he's essentially living the same moment over and over, never able to connect it to what came before. We feel sorry for him, we think, how awful to lose your thread like that. But I want you to consider something uncomfortable. Every single morning you wake up having lost hours of experience, hours of thought, hours of emotion. You were somewhere, you were doing something, you were someone. And now it's gone. The only difference between you and the character in Memento is that his gaps happen during the day, when it's obvious something is missing. Yours happen at night, when no one notices, including you. Then consider Fight Club. The protagonist suffers from insomnia. He sleeps, but his body and a fragmented part of his mind are out in the world, active, building something massive and destructive. He wakes up with bruises he can't explain and consequences he doesn't remember earning. Sometimes I wonder if we aren't walking a tightrope right between those two extremes. We aren't much different. We go out at night, into the landscape of the mind, but we almost never remember where we went. How fascinating would it be to gather the pieces and find out? What if we were all living second lives, but the evidence was scrubbed clean every morning? What if the things we do and think and feel in dreams actually shape how we move through the world when we're awake? What if decisions get made in the dark that we then execute in the light, never realizing where the impulse came from? There's a concept I want to introduce here. Let's call it the simulation room, hidden somewhere in your subconscious. What happens inside that room often determines what happens outside of it. We will explore the mechanics of that room shortly, but first we have to look at how we usually try to deal with lost time. I used to be obsessed with the idea of lucid dreaming. It seemed like the ultimate life hack. Some people try to reclaim time by sleeping less, which is usually a bad bargain. Squeezing out 1 extra hour of groggy productivity today often costs you tenfold in health down the line. But lucid dreaming promised something else. What if you could sleep fully, but also be awake and aware inside the dream? The idea was intoxicating, to be awake inside the dark theater of the mind. If we're going to spend a third of our lives unconscious anyway, what if we could reclaim some of that time? What if we could be awake inside our dreams, aware that we're dreaming, able to explore and experiment and create? I never got it to work, not reliably anyway. The techniques were frustrating, the results inconsistent. But something else stuck with me from all that reading and experimenting, a habit I keep to this day. Every article about lucid dreaming says the same thing. Write down your dreams, keep a journal by your bed. The moment you wake up, before the memories evaporate, capture whatever you can. I started doing this, not religiously, not with every dream, but when something interesting happened, I'd jot it down. And here's where I need to define what interesting means to me, because it's probably not what you'd expect. I could dream about dragons, zombies, epic battles, impossible cities, the kind of dreams that feel like movies playing in your head. And honestly, those don't interest me much. They're entertaining, sure, but they don't tell me anything I don't already know. An interesting dream to me is one that feels like a puzzle piece from that hidden world. It's not about the fantastical plot. It's about the subtle unveiling of something happening beneath the surface. Because the most interesting part isn't where your mind wanders at night. It's how those wanderings manipulate your waking hours without you ever signing off on it. This brings us back to that simulation room I mentioned earlier. Time and again, when reviewing my journals, I find myself simulating at night the exact challenges I am currently facing in my daily life. It's like my brain is running highly specific drills. A while back I was trying to change my diet. Nothing extreme, just cutting back on certain foods. And one night I dreamed I was standing in front of a pizza, just standing there staring at it. And in the dream I could feel the pull, the craving. I was watching myself be tempted, and I was watching myself decide. In that particular dream, I think I gave in. I ate the pizza. But that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is that I was rehearsing. My sleeping mind had constructed a simulation of the exact challenge I was facing in waking life, and it was running me through it, testing my willpower, practicing the decision, and I found myself wondering how many of my real decisions were influenced by rehearsals I didn't even know had happened. How often do we succeed in waking life because we already practiced succeeding somewhere else? This brings us to something I want to explore together, the difference between dreaming about actions and dreaming about decisions. Not all dreams involve doing things. Some dreams are just thinking. You might find yourself in a dream where nothing much happens externally, but internally you're working through a problem, weighing options, considering consequences. Just as we ruminate in real life, we find ourselves thinking in our dreams. You might be facing a massive fork in the road in your career or a relationship. You must go left or right. You might spend 8 hours contemplating that very choice in the abstract landscape of a dream. You might weigh the pros and cons in a language that doesn't use words. You might end up picking a path. You might even come up with the why. And then the alarm goes off. The memory of the dream evaporates like steam off a mirror, but the decision remains. You might end up making that turn in real life later that day. You might not even be aware of why you're doing it. It just feels right. You trust your gut. But maybe your gut is just the residual memory of a calculated decision made by the night shift worker. This is where it gets a little eerie. Have you ever woken up with a sudden clarity about something you'd been uncertain about, a problem you'd been wrestling with for days, and suddenly you just know what to do? You might attribute it to sleeping on it. You might think your subconscious worked through the problem overnight, but what if it wasn't subconscious at all? What if you consciously worked through it, made a deliberate choice, and then forgot the entire process? What if the decision you're about to make today was already made last night in a conversation with yourself that you'll never remember having? I'm not suggesting anything mystical here. No dream prophecies, no messages from beyond, just the mundane strangeness of having a mind that doesn't sleep when you do. Think of it like this. Imagine you share an apartment with someone, but you work opposite shifts. You never actually see them. You come home, they're gone. They come home, you're asleep, but you notice things. Dishes in the sink, furniture rearranged, notes left on the counter. You know they exist. You know they're doing things, but you can only piece together their life from the evidence they leave behind. Your dreaming self is that roommate, living in the same space, using the same brain, but operating on a different schedule. And the decisions they make affect your life, whether you remember them or not. Now I should acknowledge something. There's a version of this idea that goes too far, that treats dreams as literal prophecies or infallible guides. That's not what I'm proposing. Dreams can be noise, random firing of neurons, the brain defragmenting its hard drive, meaningless imagery stitched together without purpose. Not every dream is a message. Not every nighttime thought is significant, but some might be. And the interesting question isn't whether all dreams are meaningful, it's which ones are and how we can tell the difference. I mentioned earlier that I stopped trying to have lucid dreams, and that's true, but I never stopped paying attention. There's a middle ground between trying to control your dreams and ignoring them entirely. You might call it dream awareness or dream curiosity, just noticing what's happening in that hidden third of your life. without trying to manipulate it. The puzzle keeps growing. Every time I remember a dream that seems connected to my waking challenges, I add another piece. Every time I notice a decision that seems to have been made before I consciously made it, another piece. I don't have the full picture. I'm not sure anyone ever could. But the gathering itself is valuable. Let me leave you with something to consider. Tonight, when you go to sleep, a version of you will wake up in a world that doesn't follow the same rules as this one. That version might face a challenge you're avoiding, might rehearse a conversation you've been dreading, might stand at a crossroads and choose a direction. And tomorrow morning, when your alarm goes off and you open your eyes, you'll almost certainly forget all of it. The struggle, the choice, the resolution, gone like it never happened. But here's the thing. Just because you don't remember a decision doesn't mean you didn't make it. Just because you can't recall the rehearsal doesn't mean you didn't train. The alarm clock tells you that you just woke up, that your day is beginning, that everything before this moment was absence, emptiness, rest. But the alarm clock is a liar. You were already awake. Earlier, I mentioned the phrase sleep on it. We use it casually as advice, as if night is a neutral waiting room where decisions simply rest. But what if it is more like a council meeting you are not invited to attend, and you only receive the conclusion in the morning, stamped with a feeling instead of a reason? That house under renovation, those rooms that change overnight. Perhaps nothing is being stolen from us. Perhaps nothing needs reclaiming. It might be that every night some version of you walks through the unfinished corridors, testing doors, turning lights on and off, deciding which paths feel safe enough to keep. And maybe that is why some mornings you wake up already leaning in a direction you cannot yet explain. Because the decision was not made today, it was made last night while you were asleep.